Hello everyone, welcome to these exciting Art House Urban Bright Arts and Education videos. Art House's mission is to inspire exploration and expression in the visual arts. We work with professional artists who will be instructing you on some amazing arts and crafts projects. Are you ready?
Hi, my name is Megan Frabel and I am a summer intern at Art House. And today I'm going to be teaching you how to do a Cleveland cityscape painting. I'm going to be using watercolors today. Right now I'm going to be using a Pelican set, but you can use any set that you would like, it'll work. And I'm also going to be using ink pens to do the lining over top. I'm using Micron, but you can use this with any black pen, blue pen, or a fine Sharpie marker will do really well. So here is what we're going to be creating. So it's just going to be a simple stylized painting of Cleveland. So it's not the entire skyline, but it's just to give you a good idea of it. To start, I'm going to go with the big center building, the Key Bank building. And again, these are more impressions. They're not completely accurate, so it doesn't need to be done with a ruler. And also, you can also do this with any cityscape you could want to do. It doesn't have to be Cleveland. I just figured because of the location, this would be the best one to do for the actual instruction. And so we have the base of the building a little bit, and then we're going to get up to that tower part. And again, the lines aren't going to matter too much right now because we're just going to paint over them. But this is just to give you a good idea of where we're starting. Let's see, put another one of the buildings are right here. And we're going to be using the basic perspective cubes to fill in the rest of the buildings. So we have a longer one right here. That has a little top part. Okay, I'm probably going to leave that one off here. We can get some other shapes in the background just to give the impression of more buildings. That should go here. And I'm just using any basic pencil works. I'm just using a mechanical pencil. And so once you get the line work of the city that you want to draw all lined up, and we'll get to start to paint. Build on this. So we have basic structure here of kind of where we want our buildings to be. So what we're going to do next is, at least for me, when I paint, sometimes the pencil will smear and not be as clear as it could be because we're going to go over it with ink anyway. So I'm going to be using a rubber eraser, and with this I am going to go over and I'm going to lighten my lines so that they don't appear too prominently when I go over it with paint. You still want to be able to see where you were going with your painting and your drawing. But again, the lines are more of a rough guideline for what you're going to do with your ink pen afterward. So once I get this all lightened up, we're going to move on to our paints. say that's light enough. And so for this project, I'm going to be using more warm colors with a mix of some cooler colors. So with this paint set, I'm going to be using this pink, this purple, this orange, and a little bit of the yellow, and then some of the blues, and maybe a little bit of the teal to get a good like almost sunset appearance for the background. And then for the actual buildings, I tend to go over them with some gray, some of the blue, and a little bit of the yellow for the lights. Okay. But before you do anything, when you paint with watercolors, you want to give your piece of paper a good wash so that you have resting water on your page. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and one thing about watercolor is you want to make sure you wet your paints. So I'm going to start with the pink and make sure I get it all nice and wet, and then I'm going to let it do its thing. I'm going to put it on the water that we already have set down here. One thing about watercolors is it's something that you kind of have to let it do what it wants to do. You don't want to force it too much because then it tends to block up and get, like, it messes up your paper. Your paper will get blotty. So you just kind of want to let it run. And I'm just painting around the background area. And then I'm going to clean off my brush and put it and use a paper towel to clean it. And I'm going to switch to another color. Now I'm thinking I might go with the orange next. Stay with those warmer tones, the hot colors, to kind of get a nice blend there with the pink. And so you want to just do this until you're satisfied with the coloration you have. There are a lot of different ways to use watercolors. Like with tube paints, you spend a lot more time mixing and being more technical with them. But since this is a nice, simple, easy thing to do, just for fun, you go with what feels appropriate. Just let it do its thing. So it's nice and calm. So we have all those pinks. I'm gonna clean off my brush and add water to my purple color. And we're gonna start adding in purple. Okay. And so you see the colors are starting to blend together a bit. You can change the vibrancy of them depending on how much paint you put on your brush versus water. It just depends on how bright your sky wants to be. And that is totally up to you, because the sky comes in a million beautiful colors and that can change every day. Alright, so we've got some purples in there and that blends nice with the pink. And I'm going to put in a little bit of darker blue to show that it's going to be closer to nighttime. See, clean up your brush, get your next color, and you can start mixing that darker blue in there. Typically, with a sunset in the sky, it's darker at the base of the horizon and it gets lighter as you look up into the sky. So we're putting a lot more of our darker color here at the bottom. But we can mix a little bit throughout as well. I think just to top this off, I'm going to put in a little bit of yellow. Okay, wet my paint. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to put some of that a little higher because the sky does get lighter near the further away from the surface you get. Okay. And so what I'm going to do now, while it's still kind of wet, is something I like to personally do with some of my watercolor, is blot the paint. And so you can use napkins. I'm using a paper towel. And you can go over And you can just push on the paint. It adds a nice texture, and it can lighten it up if your colors are too vibrant. But that's, again, a personal preference. It would look just as wonderful if you just left it alone, but for the sake of going by the painting I already made, we're gonna blot the paint. So you can see some sections are now lighter and some sections are now a little bit darker. What you can also do, and I know this is probably considered messing with the paint a little much, but you can also just run over it with a wash of water again. So to get some of those other colors to blend a little bit more together. Now you don't want to have too much standing water on your paper. So, see, my pink was a little, probably more paint than there was water, so you can see it's really standing out here. But this is just to clean up and kind of let it all blend together nice and evenly. Okay, so there's our sky, and that's gonna take its time to dry. But while we're at it, since it's not too wet, I'm gonna put a water wash onto our city. Start wetting down my gray, just very lightly. This time we're going to want more water on our brush than we want color, because again, we want it to be more of a wash, not too dark. So you can see I'm mixing in my color and getting it wet, but making sure I have enough water on my brush. So I'm gonna kind of do the same thing where I'm just gonna kind of let the paint do its thing. So I put it throughout our buildings. And then I'm gonna paint, especially around the edges of the buildings with those grays. Just to give it a little bit, ooh, that's a lot of standing water there, Megan. I'm just gonna take paper towel and dab that one up a little bit because there's a little too much standing water there, and it was going to go into the background, and we don't want that. But it's okay to have it mix a little bit. But see, that might be a little too dark for the color, but with a little bit of water and just move it around, it'll be perfectly fine. We're just slowly but surely filling in some of the grays in this city area, our Cleveland skyline, and making sure we get enough color, but making sure we keep it nice and light and watery throughout our little city. Okay, and now we can start adding a little bit of that darker blue in there. Make sure you clean your brush off. Another suggestion is to use a palette if you want to mix your colors a little bit more to get more variations in shade. But I'm going more of the base colors and less mixing. I'm just mixing it with water, so I haven't really done too much of that. So I'm going to put some of this blue color in here. Get it into those buildings just to give them a little extra depth. So we should be about done for now. And I'm going to let this dry. And we'll be right back. So we are back. I have let this sit for a good 15 minutes or so. And it should be ready for me to go in it with some ink. So I'm going to be using a Micron 05. But again, you can do this with a Sharpie marker or any other more like thin point marker that you can use. Any of those will work. So when you look at your painting, you should still be able to see some of the like thinner pencil lines that you had from your initial sketching. And so what we're gonna do is kind of like go kind of where those lines are and start to just go over them with some ink. And this is gonna be a more sketchy style, so it doesn't need to be super accurate. It's just gonna be fun and loose, which is definitely one of the more fun ways to do this. If I do say so myself, that is. So as you can see, I'm just kind of going over some of these lines with some more lines. Just kind of building up landscape based on roughly where my initial pencil lines were. Again, this is not about a certain level of accuracy. This is just about kind of getting the feeling for Cityscape and just enjoying what you're doing. That's really, in the end, what matters most, is just to enjoy yourself and learn as much as you can. So some of these buildings I'm just going to leave super simple, because if you know anything about Cleveland or any city, their buildings are very complex and they have a lot of windows and edges and really beautiful architectural design. But we are just keeping it simple. And if you can notice, I'm not really adding any extra lines around the edges. I'm just going to let it breathe. So now we can kind of just go in. You know, there's a million windows on these buildings, so you can kind of just add in those as you see fit. A lot of these buildings have like a lot of lines, so we're going to use some hatching and cross hatching to kind of give a good feel for it being a skyscraper. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the most fun part about it. You can definitely use a thicker pen for these. I do kind of like the little bit of like line work that kind of gets left over if you just do it like with really close together hatching techniques, instead of just filling it completely black. I think it adds to the sketchiness of the technique that I'm using. they're cross hatching. Well, actually, this is just hatching over on this side of the building. And a little bit like some of these little areas over here. Let's see, where else can we go? Maybe we'll do some full-on cross-hatching over in this little area. So we did lines both ways. And then we have this big tower here. Add some hatching on some of the side panels. And there's a big key here too, but I'm just gonna let it be. Just draw some windows. I guess the fun thing about like these kinds of projects is that like for this, you might want to leave it loose and sketchy like this, but you could also do it like really detailed. You could do it with colored pencil. You could go back in and add like tiny little details. Like there's no bounds on what you can do with something like this. It's just the starting point to something much bigger if you want it to be. And we're going to come back to that big main tower and add a little more detail to it before we finish up. I'm going to add some lines to this building just to add a little more visual interest again. Some windows. Do some like side windows. So it's like a dotted line. And do some more vertical windows as well. I might just go over that with some gentle hatching. See, I'm using the side of my pen, so I'm not getting the full amount of ink on there. Give some of these just that little bit of texture they need. Okay, and then we have this building over here, and we'll go back to the main tower. So for the most part, I've kind of filled in a little bit of these. I'm going to go in here and do like the darken some of the windows thing. Just give out some visual, as I keep saying, visual interest. Just have a little bit of fun. I might go over this one with a little more hatching, because it is a very prominent building. So once you kind of fill it in to how you're most satisfied with it being, you can always add like some little birds, you know, the little M birds, just to add a little something to the background. No harm in that. And again, one a little further away. Yeah, so that is our little painting of Cleveland. Make sure when you draw anything to sign your work and put a date on it. I think it's the 17th. Thank you so much for watching, and for more videos and more information, you can go visit our Art House YouTube page, and we also have a website. So thank you, and I hope to see you in the next video.
Thank you for listening to Art House's video today. Don't forget to like, share, and comment with what you've made. Tune in to another instruction video on our Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube page. We are grateful to our funders and individual donors who have made this programming possible. We also wish to thank Lil Blizzard Boy from Refresh Collective for our background music. See you soon!